This is Subliminal by Lorien Niedecker. Sleep's dream, the nerve flash in the blood, the sense of what's seen. I took cold on my nerves, my mother tall, tormented, dark infested. Oof. I think I have to do that again. um,
Yes.
Subliminal by Lauren Niedecker. Sleep's dream, the nerve flash in the blood, the sense of what's seen. I took cold on my nerves, my mother tall, tormented, dark, infested. This may very well be the most difficult poem we've ever tackled as a group. I don't even really know where to begin or what to make of it. So let's open the floor. Any first impressions, any thoughts, anything anybody wants to try to tackle here? Anybody have any idea on how to start with this one?
Your first reading was actually the best. The ending comes abruptly, well, surprisingly.
So the first reading with the more abrupt ending. Yeah, I mean, because I caught myself by surprise the first time through by forgetting that it ended on dark infested. And so I was preparing, I had a full breath and was ready to keep reading, but of course it just stops there.
Yeah.
Does anybody know how Laurie Nedecker's relationship with her mother was?
Ooh, that's a good question. You know, at one point I think I did know, but now I don't recall.
Where's Vijaya? She should be looking it up.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's the Vijaya would have that at hand.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't need to read it. This is the essence of it all, of her relationship with her mother.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's true. Yeah, good point, Kurt. Yeah, we don't need to go for biographical information. We have all the information in the poem. It's very new critical, very ModPovian. Totally. Yeah, this is the relationship. What more could we possibly need to know about this relationship?
No. That's an intentional fallacy. Who
Yeah.
says is Lauren Niedecker?
Hmm?
Who says that the speaker is Lauren Niedecker?
Yes, and right. This is also right.
Good point.
Also very new critical. So now we're we've gotten both sides of the interpretive controversy here. It's either all about Lauren Niedecker or it has nothing to do with her, right? And we need to sort of thread the needle for ourselves.
It strikes me that it's kind of it's a poem of two halves. The first half is the first two stanzas. The first four lines are about a sort of a sleep, a dream sense, sort of being physically present, and then it switches to this mother figure who's yeah.
No, and both of them nerve is important. Nerve flash, and then I to call on my nerves. My nerve is important. And it's strange because the studies that often dreams are narratives, that our brain puts things together in a narrative way. And this is a very strange, because what other kind of dream would be daydream, sleep dream?
Did you call it a coffin dream?
It could be a coffin. Yeah.
Is that what did you call it? That's what I thought you said.
A daydream, but a coffin dream is perfect because we're having Halloween.
Indeed. Yeah. Seasonal.
A daydream. A sleep dream.
Back to Niedecker's mother. Nieder was off to college and she had to go back to take care of her mother. Her mother lost her hearing, I believe, and so and they were poor. They were all poor. So she had to give a lot up for her to take care of her mother.
If it's anything this morning in my meditation, I heard a voice say, "We can't all be David Bowie, or can we?" And I realized ground control to Major Tom. I mean, this is that's all I hear with my mother was tall, tormented, dark, infested. And
Mm.
that's my 2 cents for this. I'm getting ready for the eclipse. So. Oh wow.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I've had an experience in the last couple during the pandemic. I developed diabetes, and
Ooh.
I had so I'd never had the experience in my body of a nerve flash in the blood. And it was, I mean, my experience that I relate to this poem is that at night, my feet felt like electricity was going through my body in a lightning, violent way. Like I could literally feel the nerve go
Ooh.
if this is my foot and like come out. So much so that I thought, like, is my toe or foot burned? It was very strange.
Oh.
Just by the way, I don't have that anymore because my blood sugar is under
Yes.
control
Yes.
through diet. So it's possible. But so the nerve flash in the blood, and some of this I was reading as some neuropathy, and in my case, diabetes is also inherited, a hereditary disease.
Yeah.
But not to be over determined about it being that. It's just I had never had a physical experience of a nerve flash before, and I do. And of course, blood is obviously there's many meanings to blood.
Yeah.
Sins of the parents and heredity and
Yeah, that's
births
great.
and
Yeah, that's the nerve. That's a brilliant reading of
Really.
blood, Rebecca. Yeah, the nerve flash in the blood, almost as though Lauren Niedecker is sort of like jolting awake here from this dream with this kind of tingling, some sort of something neurological, something taking place with the nerves, a pain or not necessarily a pain, and is then here in the second half of the poem, we were talking about how there feels to be 2 sections, is then reminded also in this sort of dream state, right, in a way of her mother's nerve condition, or the way that her mother spoke of her own nerves, right, taking hold on the nerves, and then it's in the blood, the nerve flash is passed through. That's really cool. Yeah, I think it's a good way to start making sense of why, or of how these 2 halves are fitting together with this sort of through line of the nerve.
I mean, just on disease, cold on my nerves reminded me of neuropathy, which of course is like a numb feet, and you can't feel where you're standing. You can't get ground, you're not grounded. Something is underfoot, but you can't feel it.
I'm curious about what we make of this middle couplet, the sense of what's seen, which is ostensibly what's linking, the first reference of nerves to the second reference of nerves, the sense of what's seen. I mean, there's obviously the optic nerve and sensing in general. That's if we want to get really like neurological with it, but I don't know, maybe there's some other way to understand this rather quick.
If you
Here's
think
an idea.
if you think of sleep as processing what has come before, then it's sleep's dream is about something that is seen before.
Right. That you have this sort of input, and the dream is kind of going back through it or something. Kurt, did you have something you wanted to?
Well, just 2 things. You said that the sense of what's seen, I thought it might be, you said as a bridge. Maybe it's to sense of self versus empathy with someone else. The sense of what's seen when you see someone, then you know that someone else is there.
Hmm.
And the other thing is, oh God, I forgot what I was going to say. I forgot. I'll get back to you later if I
Okay.
remember.
Yeah.
The mother. That's off when you talk about psychoanalysis. Your parents are always in your dreams.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
very frequently are. I mean, maybe that's not true for everybody, but it is. I think that's something absolutely that was remarked in early psychoanalysis, right?
I related seeing more to the dream, the dream as something visual. We dream in picture.
I took the sense. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought someone froze maybe, and I was talking over them. I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
I took the sense of what's seen, maybe of something like the things I've seen, the things I've experienced. Like
Hmm.
when you wake up and you're like, oh, you're kind of reminded because of the dream things you have seen. And then I thought the second part about the mother. At first, I thought it was like a relationship, but after what Barbara said, I'm like, maybe it's like a representation of things she had to give up while taking care of the mother.
Hmm.
It's not about the mother at all, but more about the situation. Maybe it was a very nice mother, caring mother, but like she had to give everything up and she had to see the disease and seeing someone you love going through like a disease.
Hmm.
I wonder if there's a sense in which because subliminal is stuff you can't see. So when I first read the poem, the second stanza, the sense of what's seen kind of stood out to me as almost undercutting the title.
Hmm.
Except it relates to the first stanza and being jolted awake, and then you can still see what was in your dream. When you sort of come abruptly awake, the dream is still there and it's very present.
That's interesting. It's making me think a little bit of how like what is subliminal, like a subliminal message in a sort of classic definition is not necessarily what's not seen, but it's what you see without realizing you've seen it, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're watching, there was always these sorts of urban myths about how like you would go to the movie theater and there would be subliminal messages for like Pepsi or something showing throughout, so then you'd have to go up and go get a Pepsi from the concession stand. Like it's the idea that something can flash before your eyes and like work on your brain, work on your nerves potentially, without you having without you becoming aware that you've actually seen it, which I think actually really goes a long way into sort of unpacking this up with the sense of what's seen, right? Because there's what's seen and there's the sense of what's seen, right? There's the there's various levels. There's the liminal, the subliminal, and in one Simpsons episode they even make a joke about the superliminal, but that's completely different. That's not an actual thing. But there's what you see and what there's what enters your consciousness, your perception, and there's what you realize enters your consciousness and perception, right? There's these various levels at work.
It's also true when you first wake up from for me, I've had this experience where you first wake up from a dream and it's vivid and you have a lot of feeling about it, and then it's gone, and later in the day you remember that you had a powerful dream, but you can't really remember the story of it, just
Totally.
the sense of it. And the beginning is certainly about sensations. This it is Halloween-like, sort of this frightening, chilling sensation, these few words, and then maybe gone, just fleeting.
Yeah, so that also ties it right back to the dream very well. Yeah, this sort of the way that dreams, they sort of linger with you, like in you in an uncanny way. Like I always remember all of my dreams upon waking up and then somehow proceed to forget them like 10 minutes later. It's always a very, very bizarre feeling, but we all get so used to it, right? Like it's just what dreams are, it's just what sleep is. And then yeah, it's true. You can kind of get these flashes once in a while of but
This may be
subliminal.
banal, but I tend to be a punster, and I see dark infested. I like the fact that it's one word, and I know you do too, Max, because you live in Germany.
Yeah, it's a very German style compound. Yeah, go on.
But also you hear in the background shark infested, and talk about subliminal.
Mhm.
I mean, and when a poem I don't know.
Shark infested is great. That's absolutely, yeah. There's absolutely it's that word dark infested is totally chiming with shark infested. That's cool. There's an extra. It really steps up the sense of danger or menace here at the end, which is kind of in the poem the whole time, right? Like I think this sleep's dream, the nerve flash in the blood, right? Like the blood in the water, right? That's also sort of sharkian theme. But it's this whole poem is kind of is menaced the whole time, right? Like you're dreaming and then you have this nerve flash. And and then you end with this sort of dark infested, shark infested, this swarming.
Fins up.
Hmm?
Fins up.
Yeah, right.
Well, circling back up again to the sense of what's seen, I'm thinking about sense as gut sense, as intuition. And when like the phrase like know what I know, I see what I see. And then the tension, if someone tells you you didn't see that, you don't know that, the sense of what's seen, to me it's like I trust my intuition about what I know, and I will not be told I didn't see what I saw.
Wow.
I could say a little bit something to that. There's sort of a philosophical definition of subliminal, which you might call pre-verbal thought. And I like that definition a lot, because I like to think about when I'm trying to find the words, and somehow there's a thought that has its integrity, but you don't have the words yet. And here you are saying what you just said, Rebecca. It sounds a little bit like that, because you see something, but maybe you don't have the words to describe it. But you know that's there, and your knowledge is somehow stronger than maybe your ability to articulate what you saw.
Or I was thinking it may be unsafe to articulate it. Like if you're a child and you have a dark infested mother.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah.
And then tall means she's much bigger. She's over, tall is somebody who's over somebody else, taller than somebody else. She remembers tall.
Yeah, tall.
Menacing. It fits in with Kurt's idea, menacing.
Tall, tormented, dark, infested. Yeah, and the tall. Yeah, this also goes, I think, to Rebecca's point a little bit too as well. Like there seems to be, if tall is something that stands out, then perhaps we have a sort of child's point of view perspective, right? Because unless her mother was truly exceptionally tall, I don't really know what that has to do with, why this tall, tormented, dark, infested, why those three descriptors, other than to sort of situate us in a kind of child's POV, right? Like when you're little and all adults seem to be giants.
And it's not a very friendly description of the mother, is it? This is not a mother you would want to have at all.
No.
Tall, tormented, dark, infested, and it kind of puts me in mind almost of a fairy tale, and she's like this wicked witch in the wood kind of figure. I can just see, you know, maybe it's because we're near Halloween, I can just see this dark figure looming up at the end of the poem.
I read the poem quite differently. To
Okay.
me, the third stanza was some kind of interjection. I took hold of my nerve, my mother, and then go back to the sense of what's seen, told, or tormented, dark, infested. So when you read it, Max, and you clearly thought told, tormented, and dark, infested was about the mother, it was quite the shock to me.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I had both ideas, but actually, when I started reading that, well, maybe I'm more of a literature man, because when I read Sleep's Dream, what came to my mind was the dream allegory, and I was expecting, oh, here comes a dream allegory, and then in the end, it wasn't. And also the title, the first idea that I had was this romantic concept of the sublime, and it's also included in words somehow. And then you get down the first section of that poem, tall, tormented, and that is the sublime.
Yeah, the connection back to the sublime is an interesting one for sure. I hadn't thought of the sublime, of course, being this, you know, romantic, poetic aspiration, right? And you have this sort of distortion of it here with the subliminal.
At first, I thought it was far-fetched, but when I reread the poem, it's in there.
On wordplay of subliminal, for some reason I kept reading it as sublingual, which is like to put a pill under your tongue and I guess, you know, hold it there, wait for it to dissolve. So it was like this thing under your tongue.
Sublingual, yeah, okay. Which would have a lot of like poetic resonance as well, right?
You have to just kind of hold it in there. So you don't want it to, yeah.
But what about the apostrophe S? What is that? Is that a genitive? Is it a contraction? Sleep is dream? Or can we neglect the apostrophe and it becomes the plural, sleeps, dream?
Good question.
In terms of one sleep, and you have more sleeps in a way, and they all dream.
Yeah, it's
Perhaps an unfinished thought, an unfinished sentence. She didn't actually give the word that comes after it. On my nerves.
What was that? Can you repeat?
I just said maybe it's an unfinished sentence, in that she doesn't seem to want to finish it somehow, because it's a grammatical question. It's usually possessive has something that's possessed.
Yeah.
So, and I recently read something, maybe it was a month ago, where someone deliberately loved to sort of make things that didn't finish. And I thought that was very interesting. I still can't understand it. So
Yes. I
Funny.
read it as a possessive.
All lines are fragmented. You do not have many verb forms.
Well, what's the opposite of a dream that, like, sleep's dream? I think you can let sleep get away with a lot of stuff, but to me, when you have a dream, it's like you have to be responsible for it. Like, I have a dream to become something, You have to be responsible, but maybe sleep's responsible for this kind of dream.
There is sort of an controllability about what you're going to dream, but you don't really own the dream as you fall into it. Sleep does rather own the dream. Sleep's in charge. Sometimes I can be in the dream and be active, like tell someone to go away, and they do, and I sort of know it, or I sort of know I'm dreaming. But most of the time it's just happening, and I'm not in charge.
Yeah, so you're really so juxtapose it to my dream as something I want for the future, and the sleep's dream that's really away from you and just happens. Yeah.
Right.
Barbara, can you say more about knowing that you're not in charge when you're really the director of your movie?
Every once in a while I've been in a dream and it's gone away. I don't like it, and I can change it.
Yeah.
But that's very rare. Usually when I wake up, I remember something that I experienced that I wasn't in charge of.
Can one of the things that I think that DNA was thought of in a dream, the connection of the spirals.
Yes, yes,
Really?
it was. Yes.
And so dream, what kind of function? Nobody really understands the function of dreams, because it seems they put things together for you in a kind of new way. Interesting. And I heard a neuroscience talk one day saying when he has a very interesting dream, he goes back to sleep and see if he can continue it, and sometimes he can.
Yes.
That's also interesting as a control. It's kind of off the subject, but interesting about what Barbara said. Very interesting.
I do think that's a very interesting idea, that you don't take ownership over your dreams, like the ones that you're sleeping. I think that's very interesting. Like, it happens to you, something is doing that to you because it's your
Uncontrolled.
yeah.
Yeah.
Even if you're not in control, it's still from you, of you. I don't know.
That's
Well, Ramdas wrote about 30 books on that. Control.
More I was just going to say, more the unconscious is taking over rather than that conscious state.
Oh no, it's not like any like criticism of what you said or anything. I don't want.
Oh no, I understand
that.
that.
I just thought it was so interesting.
Well, that made me think. What you said made me think of that conscious unconscious. I hadn't quite put that in my mind, but yeah, I think that's helpful. Thank you.
I think, yeah, that's a good way to understand the possessively here, for sure. Like, as thinking, challenging this idea of this dream, it's like where I was like, oh, I had a dream, it was my dream. It's like, yeah, but is it really? It's always, is it there's this different kind of, there's this kind of like, I don't want to say invasion, but this sort of like steering of the brain and the mind and the imagination that happens, and it's sleep that's doing it, right? And that seems also to link a lot to the other themes of control, right, that we're talking about here, especially in relation to this poem, like the nerve flash, the sudden, your body like doing a thing that you can't control. And then also I think this idea of inheritance, right, of genetic inheritance. It's another thing, like your body is sort of it's not entirely in your control in that respect, right? Like there are characteristics of your body that have to do with like your mother, right? And that's not something you can change most of the time. So
but you can through, like Rebecca just showed us, that she controlled her diabetes.
Yeah, that's true.
And she doesn't have it anymore through diet.
Right.
You can consciously focus on something other than the nerve flash,
Right.
It's I want to go back to Mark's thought about sleep's dream or sleep's dream or sleep's dream. All those different various forms of the title. Why did she choose that, and why did she put that damn little apostrophe in there?
I'd like to also say it sort of sounds a little like stream, sleep stream.
Sleep Street, yeah. Ooh, and that kind of that also works with some of these other kinds of like moments of punning, right? That we've started to identify.
Didn't you say you're a punster, Kurt?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I've
I
noticed.
relish the people who sort of laugh and then who suppress their laugh and then walk away and then giggle.
Because we all forget to use our giggle wands. We've got them. We've all got one, you know. Just
I like the idea of sleep stream because
yes.
it is like a stream of thought, and she lived by water. That's interesting. Kurt, I like that a lot.
I can credit Mark with that because maybe his German accent brought that out for me, the way he said it.
Oh,
That line, the sense of what's seen, is interesting too. It's not what's visually a sense of it, like an intuition of it, not necessarily seeing it. And maybe getting a sense of her mother that was shocking, that she never had before, or that she wouldn't let herself think before, that came to her in that flash, that kind of frightening flash. And then at the end, she suddenly thought tall, tormented, dark, infested. And maybe that's something she couldn't really admit when she was awake.
Well, when she took cold on the nerves, did she mean she put ice on her feet or ice on her hands and it helped? What does she mean by I took cold on my nerves?
That's a really good question, and to me it sounds like a sort of way of talking about being sick, right? Getting a chill, yeah, I took a cold on my nerves, you know, I had a
And then she has an Emily Dickinson dash, my mother.
Yeah.
You know.
It looks like it's that dash looks like it's attributing the dialogue. I took cold on my nerves. A quote said by my mother, right? Like sometimes when you see like a quote, like a sort of you find like a citation or something, and it'll be attributed with a dash. The name. I want to quickly just tag back to what Mark, what you said earlier about the lack of verbs in this, which I think was a really good observation. The only
sorry, maybe I could ask something else first.
Yeah.
This I took on my nerves. It's split into lines. It starts with quotation marks and it also ends with quotation marks. So it indicates that it is one speech part, one sense. Does it really belong together? Is that one unit, or are these two fragments? I took cold on my nerves, or is it I took cold on my nerves? And in each phrase, something is missing.
Related to Barbara, Barbara, what you said did resonate with me. Like on a feeling level, I feel cold is like you numb yourself or disassociate, or you go, to be safe, you maybe disassociate or numb. And I think of a flash, like when you wake up from a nightmare, you have to discern, is there really a threat here, or did I imagine it, or is this a signal, is this a message? can I forget it? Do I want to forget it? Or is my life and safety reliant on me getting this message?
Isn't the phrase something is getting on my nerves?
Yes.
On my nerves. And there's nothing getting on my nerves, but I took a cold. I caught a cold. And that gets on my nerves.
Right. Or you get on my nerves.
Is it I cool my nerves?
So you won't get to me.
No, anything.
But usually that single quotation mark that looks like an apostrophe, it sounds like somebody else's words, something maybe somebody else said, because if this kind of quotation in English usually comes with a double quotation mark, the kind people always do this.
Yeah.
When it's a quote within a quote. So it could be a quote that her mother said.
Oh, Allison, do you want to chime in?
Still with you. Yes, I was actually wondering if the cold on the nerves could be referring to like an actual virus. It's a little close to home at the moment, but you know, something like I'm thinking when you were talking about the neurological different effects, like something like, for example, like a viral meningitis that affects the nervous system, or I don't know if it's confirmed, but I know there's a lot of talk right now about MS being multiple sclerosis, a neurological chronic condition being caused initially by a viral infection. I wonder if it could be one of those sort of more antiquated things that, you know, doctors and patients used to say, that might describe an actual medical condition that maybe we don't necessarily relate to because it's obsolete, but this may be something that, you know, was said at times. A cold on the nerves might have been an actual condition. It might have been referring to the mother's condition, right? I also want to say, with regard to the neuropathy, which I also experience, it's an interesting concept that, you know, a damaged nerve or damaged nerve pathways can still feel, you know, much as a damaged relationship can still have love or have meaning. So I don't know if I read the dark infested mother as necessarily of the, you know, a villainous, shall we say, like, because it has been the analysis thus far that could be sort of a negative type, but it's possible that like when we're talking about subliminal, there's that surface memory that we have, you know, when say, for example, departed loved ones, after a long time or some time, we do have these sort of almost caricatures in our head of individuals and relationships that we've had. And then there is the underlying, like the meat that of the detail, I guess, of the relationship that may come to us at times in a flash, like in a lucid dream, you know, that we can't quite grasp consciously, because those memories, you know, particularly young people that have lost loved ones, the detail, right? The detail fades quickly, but it is still there, you know, at times, and will come back through something like a dream.
Thanks. Yeah, no, Allison, that makes a lot of sense. I really like this point about the damaged nerves pathways still being able to feel, or just like this persistence of feeling and sense and sensation in situations where, you know, it's presumed to be absent or no longer possible. Yeah, and then reading into, reading that back into this sort of, the connection, the connective nerve between mother and daughter here, right? As presumably daughter, that's true. Mark did warn us against the various fallacies here. Perhaps we were not exactly sure who the speaker is, but between mother and child here, right? There's still something there, even if it seems soured here in this moment.
Well, looking at tormented and dark infested, I mean, of course, maybe the human reaction is like, I don't want roaches in my house, or I don't want a roach in my, like, I don't want this vermin, whatever. I don't want something I don't want an infestation. But if it's your mother who you're dependent on, and who's supposed to be your protection, to have your mother go cold, and that's a need you have. You might wonder, how did the mother become cold and tormented? So something's happened, I think, to the mother. And an infestation is something that acts upon something, a place, a person. So that the verb infested, something, I saw it as something happened to the mother. I was wondering what you guys thought about that.
You're reminding me, Rebecca, I had forgotten that that the mother did lose her hearing, but the husband also deserted her. So something did happen to the mother. And also I looked up that phrase about chilling the nerves. I Googled it, I cheated. And it's a phrase that means to calm your nerves, to cool, to actually calm down. So it starts with this, irritating the nerves. And then at that point, if that could mean a lot of things, but that's one thing it could mean. Is that it's a calming of the nerves. And it's a phrase, so it could be in quotes. I mean, it's a phrase people used. I had never heard it.
Are these connections correct?
Yeah.
I mean, as Jerome correctly said, does tormented refer to my mother? Does it refer to the dream? The verbs are missing. It's totally unclear what refers to what other object concept in the poem.
The lack of verbs, as you mentioned earlier, I think is really crucial here, because the only, looking at it again, the only clear verb, that's spelled out, like there's arguably two verbs, but the only one that you can say for sure is took. I took cold on my nerves, which is a strange, in the context of this expression, which, thank you, Barbara, for giving us some background on it. In the context of this expression, took, it's like, it's a verb for sure, but it's not, I took cold on my nerves. It's not it's not like I took part in something, or I took, I took my sword out of my scabbard. It's like, to take hold on one's nerves is actually a very passive kind of thing, right? Like I took ill, right? I took ill, which is the other one. Like I didn't choose for this to happen. It happened to me. But the way that it's sort of said here, and then the only other verb in the whole thing is potentially the contraction of what is, right? The sense of what is seen, what's seen. That would be the verb to be, but it's not really, I don't know. Took is really, I mean, we have some debate about, the apostrophes here anyway, right? So it's hard to say if it's really the sense of what is seen, or the sense of the scene that belongs to what. So yeah, there's the verb, the lack of verbs, and also the fact that the only verb took is actually in cited or quoted speech, right? Like it's somebody else saying this. It's almost like Niedecker is like, I don't do verbs here. And she doesn't, which is kind of, it's sort of fascinating. There's really like, I think this is actually pretty common in a lot of Niedecker poems, but here it's really, it's seems pretty extreme. I don't know if there's any thoughts on any of that.
It makes it really a permanent state of it was very brooding to me, especially because I thought of dark infested not in relation to the mother, but in relation to the sense of what's seen. It was something that's really like a constant in her dreams or in what she feels or senses.
And the next question is, who actually says that? To quote, on my nerves. Is it the mother? Is it someone else? You have the dash, which can be a break, a pause, and then you have my mother tall, tormented. My mother is tall and tormented. So the beginning of a new idea.
Right.
Unlike cold, which seems kind of, like took like kind of something given or something kind of passive. I was thinking about trauma response, which is fight, freeze. Fight, freeze, fawn is a new one.
Flight.
What's the other?
Flight.
Yeah, fly or flee, right?
Fight,
Fight.
right. So funny, I forgot that. So anyway, freeze. So anyway, it was like, I know. I took cold. When you're traumatized, you can get your body goes into freeze state. And anyway, that's interesting. I mean, I also have that experience of being in an accident and then getting into like this frozen state. And in fact, one of my friends came to me after I was released from the hospital from this accident, and she said, I think that your consciousness is still stuck at the accident, and I'm going to help you integrate your body to what happened. And I was like, okay, I guess. What? But definitely it was like the trauma made me like sort of divorced from myself, and I had to like get it reintegrated. So I think took cold reminds me of freeze trauma.
Back to the phrase that I looked up, it's really, the phrase is more like chilling my nerves. So she may have been playing with that in a new way, that chilling one's nerves is calming oneself down, but she says that in a different way. So she might have known that phrase, but played with it, because I don't think it quite fits in the way of calming down.
I mean, now we say chill out. You need to chill out, or I gotta chill out.
But taking cold on your nerves seems more chilling to me. Back to Halloween, it seems like a chilling kind of phrase.
Well, to me, it would be chilling if my mother was checked out.
I have a little other idea, is that I like this idea that you sort of examine the whole universe of your body, and like, where are your emotions? I don't know exactly where they are. When you wake up and you've had a very tough dream, you have this weird kind of sense of pressure in your head. And I like this nerve flash in the blood, because I sort of feel like there's a difference between water. Blood is sort of a water-based thing, and nerve is sort of electricity-based. And so when you talk about cold on electricity, you don't throw water on an electrical fire. So I sort of have this feeling that going with cold on your nerves, that's might be ineffective. I mean, sure, I don't know. So there's just something there that's troubling me a little bit. But I think it's kind of interesting to expand on that. The other thing I just wanted to say is that we started out with Barbara talking about an aging mother, and now we're all talking about her as a mother to a child because she's tall. And isn't that sort of, shouldn't we put that full circle in some sense?
I
Because
was
it
thinking
could
of
very
that.
well be she's an aging mother. Maybe she has Alzheimer's or something. And that as a mother, you're still the child in some sense, but you're also, she's an aging mother. So the whole story is compressed.
I was also thinking about the full circle thing you said. I think it's interesting. But I was thinking more in effect of becoming your parents, because we talked about the hereditary thing before. So I was thinking like you subconsciously maybe become your mother, and then if she heard like the phrase when she was younger and it doesn't make sense, or as a child you sometimes don't even like hear something right, like if it was like chilling the nerves, but you remember it wrong because you're older now, and then maybe something happens and you think, oh no, I'm becoming my mother and I understand this phrase now. Maybe she's like she thinks of herself like dull and tormented and dark infested.
I mean, I think Lori Niedecker's a good candidate for being dark infested. I'm not sure how tall she was, but I like that because you're sort of unpacking a bit of a like poetic theory here from this poem a little bit, right? Like that there's this relationship to language that changes, right? Like this sort of old-fashioned phrase that describes a feeling, but not always necessarily accurately, like serves as a medical diagnosis, and then it sort of kind of comes back to you and it makes sense, and then it unleashes sort of really tangentially related ideas, like like, oh, I was dreaming and then I had this nerve flash, and then oh yeah, my mom used to talk about her nerves, and oh yeah, my mom was really troubled, right? Like this sort of interesting sequence development of a thought, of an idea through this suddenly changed relationship to language, right? This thing, this phrase that would have entered subliminally, right? As we're saying, right? Like as you just said, right? Like this kind of, this thing that kind of, you hear it once and it sticks in your brain and it kind of works on you, and then it comes back one day, right? It's suddenly changed, suddenly making sense. Because it's probably not something that a young Lori Niedecker or a child hearing their parents say something like that, you'd be like, oh, I don't know what you mean. And it's not until until it happens to you, right? Mark?
Makes that then it is an allegory, right? The idea that I had, usually in literature you have a lot of these allegories, dream allegories, and now you're comparing this change in language, change in relationships. So it is an allegory, right?
Interesting. Yeah, insofar as the allegorical is about kind of A reflecting B, right? Like it's about one term kind of standing in.
That's a simple image.
Yeah.
That could turn to one of our next questions. Is it an imagist poem?
It's a good that's a very ModPo question, and a good question to end our discussion on, if anybody wants to make the case for this being an imagist poem or not, and then we can move over to the George Oppen poem, since we're at the halfway mark now. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's true. Niedecker gets grouped in with the imagists sometimes in our syllabus, no, not necessarily. No, she's a Dickinsonian. Well, anyway, does anybody have any thoughts on whether this poem, exhibits some sort of poetic school, perhaps imagism?
I was thinking that she's talking about the sense of what's seen, not really literally
Yeah.
what's seen. And as I think about the word tall, I think, I know a lot of, very short women in my life who seem tall. Tall is people with big personalities in your life seem a lot taller than they are. So that word tall could carry some since she's having a sense of, that word tall could mean just big, a big personality in her life. So those are my final thoughts.
Well, thanks, Barbara. That's anyone else wanna chime in? I mean, there's another well, yeah, I don't know. Does anybody else have any thoughts before I say what I was about to say?
I
Okay.
think that the last line, the last word that we've talked about, the dark infested, for me takes us right back to the beginning, to the first stanza, to this kind of like a nightmare happening with a nerve in the blood. It just sends you round again.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, the we're coming to realize your own, like, how darkness has infested you too, right? Like, Allison, go ahead.
Yeah, just riffing off that. I mean, when we say dark infested, I mean what sprang to me there was actually like, or sorry, when you say back to the beginning, what sprang to my mind was actually, the true beginning, like, the Big Bang, black holes. I mean, dark infested, where you know, the presence of an absence of, matter itself, but it could be the presence of an absence of anything, um either literal or metaphorical. So that was an interesting choice of words that was, sometimes I find, especially when I'm in listening in mode, the analysis can often be as poetically stated as the actual poem. And it's such a treat and a privilege, of course, to participate in this and to kind of coast while the rest of you are doing the heavy lifting. Thank you.
No, thank you, Allison, for that insight and for joining us today.
Well, actually, I think that the poem is the opposite. It's not an imagist poem, but because you expect the exact word, not the nearly exact word. Caroline identified this dark infested, the dream as a nightmare. Why does she talk about the dream and not the nightmare? And also these fragments, as it is totally unclear what it really means. It is a concentration, but not everything is clear. It's quite blurred.
I would say that this poem seems very precise and the words are carefully chosen. Even if it's open to interpretation, it doesn't mean that they were not carefully chosen.
But why dream, not nightmare?
I think it's because it's sort of like a noun and a verb. Nightmare isn't a verb, but sleep is the universal, and something invades it. If it's a nightmare, sleep can be good, bad, but then, aha, it's a bad one. But if you say it's a nightmare, it can't be a good one.
That's true. I also think that nightmare would introduce from the get-go a kind of a tone or a sort of drama that in general Niedecker doesn't seem interested in, although to qualify that, she does coin the fun neologism dark infested, which is very goth and kind of nightmarish, right? But nevertheless, yeah, I mean, I take your point, Mark, but I also think that there's like a, you know, to say, you know, Sleep's Nightmare from the get-go would turn it into a kind of like gothy poem, right? And when in reality, I think she wants to be more clear headed here. She wants to sort of bring an analysis forth that winds up being evaluative at the end. My mother was tormented and you know, not only that, but she was dark infested.
Is it clear? Who is tormented?
Right, okay, yeah, well, that's true. We don't actually know, but there's this idea of torment, of being tormented, and but that takes on this affect of being dark, infested, that it takes on this color, it takes on this mood, it takes on this, you know, this connotation.
Yeah, I agree with you actually. I think the poem works its way towards the word dark infested.
Yeah, it does. Right.
When I said it sends you back, and then you think, oh yeah, so maybe the sleep dream was, you know, becoming a nightmare. And yes, I agree. You don't want the word nightmare in the first stanza because it would change the tone of the poem.